Welcome to this Saturday's live show. Why am I dressed like this, sitting in the cockpit of a 737 taxiing down the runway? Because this week is about planes. A couple weeks ago we had trains. This time it's about planes. And actually this is going to be a two-part episode because my guest this week and next week is Melissa May. Shock is her call sign. She's a recipient of the Distinguished Flying Cross. She flew an F16. She's retired now, and she flies a 737. She's got some interesting stuff to talk about. That's why it's split into two parts. Now, I wanted to, for those of you who've maybe never seen me before, why do I do these live shows? Well, I play music, or I try. I'm not going to quit my day job. There's a lot of musicians I know, and we're bored. With this COVID, it's just terrible. It keeps gigs down. So I started doing these live shows. And pretty soon I got bored with just doing music, so that's when I started having a variety, hence Melissa. Now I want to give before I get into that, I want to give a quick history of flight. You know, the idea of flying's been around way before the Wright brothers. A lot of failed attempts. And then actually in 1483, and I'm sure you've seen pictures, Leonardo da Vinci had the concept of flying machines. And he had an understanding of air resistance, which is the basic principle of today's aerodynamics. Then in 1850, the first glider made its flight. Then the first powered flight, that was where the Wright brothers came in, 1903. They made the first successful flight in history with a self-propelled, heavier-than-air aircraft. Orville piloted that gasoline-powered biplane. It stayed aloft for about 12 seconds and covered about 120 feet on its inaugural flight. From that humble beginning, by 1906, airplanes were being invented that were more closely resembling the biplanes and triplanes that you're used to. Then, around 1909, countries realized how airplanes could be a threat by attacking from the sky. So enter the big rush to produce planes. And that brings me to the first song, Scott Arlen. You can find him on YouTube. He's doing The Bloody Red Baron by the Royal Guardsmen. And he also talks a couple interesting history points about the Red Baron. So looks like we're getting ready to take off. Why don't you find a seat and put your tray in the upright position and fasten your seatbelts, and let's get this thing going. I got a regular flight log I'm going to try and follow, so here we go.
Can you fly this plane and land it?
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Scott, you have a historic song for us. And you have some history on that song, surely.
Well, yes, I do, Roger. And don't call me Shirley. This is as close as I could get to a World War I flying ace. Now I've got to put some glasses on that I can see in. That's better. First, a little history. The man and the myth are largely the same. Baron von Richthofen, aka the Red Baron, as he was called by the British, came from money. He began the war in the cavalry as a mounted scout, then fought in the trenches along with the infantry. He transferred to a fighter squadron and made squad leader at the age of 24. He did actually have 80 confirmed kills, not including his first 2 as a gunner. His plane was painted differently than the rest of the squad, possibly red, so that his own German troops could recognize him from the ground. Snoopy versus the Red Baron. After the turn of the century, in the clear blue skies over Germany came a roar, and a thunderman had never heard like the screaming sounds of a big warbird. Up behind a man in a plane, Baron von Richthofen was his name. Now 80 men tried and 80 men died. Now they're buried together on the countryside. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 or more, the bloody Red Baron was throwing up the score. Now 80 men died trying to end that spree of the bloody Red Baron of Germany. In the nick of time, a hero arose, a funny-looking dog with a big black nose. He flew into the sky to seek revenge, but the Baron shot him down. Curses! Foiled again. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 or more, the bloody Red Baron, he was rolling up the score. Now 80 men died trying to end that spree of the bloody Red Baron of Germany. Now Snoopy swore that he'd get that man, so he asked the great pumpkin for a new battle plan. He challenged the German to a real dog fight. While the Baron was laughing, he got him in his sights. That the bloody Red Baron, he was in a fix. He had tried everything, but he run out of tricks. Snoopy fired once, then Snoopy fired twice, and that bloody Red Baron went spinning out of sight. Now it's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 or more, that bloody Red Baron, he was rolling up the score. Now 80 men died trying to end that spree of the bloody Red Baron of Germany. Yes, it's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 or more, that bloody Red Baron, he was rolling up the score. Yes, 80 men died trying to end that spree of the bloody Red Baron of Germany. Yes, that bloody Red Baron of Germany. Ha! One more thing. As far as his demise, there are more romantic accounts. However, the most historically accepted is that he was shot down by Australian gunners on the ground while in pursuit of a British plane. Thanks for having me, Roger.
Here I am over here. Hey, thanks, Scott. You know, World War I innovation brought the machine gun. It used to hang underneath the chassis, or they had another gunner behind the pilot that would shoot. But what really advanced that thing with the Red Baron was the machine gun was synchronized to shoot through the propeller. The other thing I'd seen about the Red Baron that was I thought was just amazing, is that it was a standing order that if you encountered him, you were to land immediately and not engage. Anyway, let me get back to the flight plan here. Here.
Flight 209er, you are cleared for takeoff.
Roger. Huh?
LA departure frequency 123.9er.
Roger. Huh? Request vector. Over. What?
Flight 209er, clear for vector 324.
We have clearance, Clarence. Roger, Roger. What's our vector, Victor?
Tower radio clearance over.
That's Clarence, over.
Over. Roger.
Huh?
Roger, over.
What? Huh?
Who?
Let me see. I'm gonna push some of these these buttons and try and get Vic on here. Hey,
Hey,
Vic.
Roger. Hey, everyone.
Hey, what's your vector, Victor? You have clearance.
Roger, Roger. Well within radar range. Goodbye to all my friends at home. Goodbye to people I trusted. I've got to go out and make my way. I might get rich, you know, I might get busted. My heart keeps calling me backwards as I get on the 707. Riding high, got some tears in my eyes. You know you got to go through hell before you get to heaven. Big old jet airliner, don't carry me too far away. Whoa, big old jet airliner, 'cause it's here that I've got to stay. Touching down in New England town, feel the heat coming down. I've got to keep on keeping on. You know the big wheel keeps us spinning around. Now going with some hesitation, you know that I can surely see that I don't want to get caught up in that funky shit going down in the city. Big old jet airliner, don't carry me too far away. Whoa, big old jet airliner, 'cause it's here that I've got to stay. Whoa, big old jet airliner, don't carry me too far away. Whoa, big old jet airliner, 'cause it's here that I've got to stay. Big old jet airliner, carry me to my home. Whoa, big old jet airliner, 'cause it's here that I've got to stay. 'Cause it's here where I belong.
How do you like my background noise? Coming up, we have Larry Boyd and Dave Kavanaugh. But you know what? I think I'll do one. In fact, I'm out there on the wing.
Here, quickly! There's a man out there.
What?
Look!
It's a true story. Here I am flying to Hawaii. Well, I packed my bags and bought myself a ticket to the land of the tall palm tree. Aloha, old Milwaukee. Hello, Waikiki. I just stepped off of that airplane when I heard her say, Nuka Nuka Waka Waka, Nuka Nuka Waka Waka, would you like to lay? Oh, let's talk dirty and Hawaiian, whisper in my ear. Kick a puka, make a wakahini, are the words I long to hear. Lay your coconut on my dicky, what the heck a muka muka dear. Let's talk dirty and Hawaiian, say the words I long to hear. It's a ukulele Honolulu sunset, just listen to the grass skirts sway, drinking rum from a pineapple out on Honolulu Bay. Steel guitars are playing, Machi's talking with her hands. Gimme okadoka, make a wish, I wanna poke her words I understand. Oh, let's talk dirty and Hawaiian, whisper in my ear. Kick a puka, make a wakahini, all the words I long to hear. Lay your coconut on my tiki, what the heck a muka muka dear. Let's talk dirty and Hawaiian, say the words I long to hear. Well, I bought a lot of junk out with my moolah, and I sent it to the folks back home. Never had a chance to dance a hula, well, I guess I should have known. When you start talking to the sweet wahine, walking in the pale moonlight, Okanoka, what is that? A Nakaraka says, Bumaka, make my city right. Oh, let's talk dirty and Hawaiian, whisper in my ear. Kick a puka, make a wakahini, all the words I long to hear. Lay your coconut on my tiki, what the heck a muka muka dear. Let's talk dirty and Hawaiian, say the words I long to hear. Aloha, oe, aloha, oe, ikaniao, kanapo. It's a true story.
Glide slow. Pull up.
Give me a ticket for an aeroplane. Ain't got time to take a fast train. Lonely days are gone, I'm a-coming home. Oh, baby, she wrote me a letter. I don't care how much money I gotta spend. Gotta get back to my baby. Lonely days are gone, I'm a-coming home. My baby, she wrote me a letter. Well, she wrote me a letter, said she couldn't live without me no more. Listen, mister, can't you see I gotta get back to my baby once more. Anyway, yeah, give me a ticket for an aeroplane. Ain't got time to take a fast train. Lonely days are gone, I'm a-coming home. My baby, she wrote me a letter. Well, she wrote me a letter, said she couldn't live without me no more. Listen, mister, can't you see I gotta get back to my baby once more. Anyway, yeah, give me a ticket for an aeroplane. I ain't got time to take a fast train. Lonely days are gone, I'm a-coming home. My baby wrote me a letter. My baby,
I wonder what the in-flight entertainment is. Let's see. Well, hello. I'm your in-flight entertainment. Revving up your engine, listen to her howl and roar. Metal under tension, begging you to touch and go. Highway to the danger zone. Right into the danger zone. No way I'm going to do that entire song. You know how hard it is to find plane songs? But here we have Larry Boyd.
This is Larry Boyd from Rock Island, Illinois. And Melissa, I was asked to do a song for you about airplanes. I only know a couple. This is one of them. In the early morning rain, hallelujah. In my heart, and my pockets full of sand. I'm a long way from home. Miss my loved ones so. In the early morning rain, no ways to go. Out on runway number 9, 6707 said to go. I'm stuck here in the ground, where the cold wind blows, and the liquor tasted good. And the women all were fast. There she goes, my girl. She's going down the last. Hear the mighty engine roar. See the silver bird on high. Westward bound, far above the clouds she'll fly. The rain's all falling, and the sun always shines. She'll be flying over my home. Now 3 hours drive. No airport's got me down. It's no earthly good to me. I'm stuck here on the ground, cold and drunk as I can be. Can't jump the jet plane like you can a freight train. Best be on my way in the early morning rain. You can't jump a jet plane like you can a freight train. Best be on my way a picture of that. Thank you.
Okay, taking off my tourist outfit, and I'm gonna take this off, and I'm gonna turn down the background white noise. How's that? That's better. And that's the music part of the show. I'm gonna get myself out of here with not that, that again. There we go. And I'm gonna bring on Melissa May. Her name, Shock, is her call sign. She was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for achievements during the Operation Iraqi Freedom, going up against SA or surface to air artillery, anti-aircraft. She's fascinating to talk to, and she's been answering all kinds of questions. I've had people send in messages to me with video questions, and I'll present them to her. We're doing this in 2 parts, so next week will be more toward the 737, but she will pick up some straggler questions. Anyway, let me get her all queued up here.
All right, I see
Oh.
it.
Melissa, hi, how are you? I'm Roger.
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good, I'm good. Should I address you as Captain or Melissa, or I do?
You know, I'm comfortable with Shock. I like Shock. It was my call sign in the Air Force, and
I like that. How did that come about? What does that stand for?
Well, everybody gets named in their first fighter squadron once they're complete with their mission qualification training. And I was named in Korea by a bunch of dudes in my squadron, and I was the only girl there at the time. And so my call sign is an acronym for it's Shock, and it's Scarlet-Haired Ovulating Commie Killer.
I love it. Shock. Okay. Hey, what I'm doing here, usually I play music as a hobby, I'm not going to quit my day job, but more and more I'm seeing variety is really important. So that's why I reached out to you. I actually saw you heard you on a podcast on that RFT. I don't remember what number it was, but we can talk about that later too. But that's why I reached out for you, and I've got somewhat of a flight plan here that we'll try and follow. You've got a birthday coming up, don't you?
I do. Yes. Thanks for the reminder.
One of the most important questions I ask people: what did you have for supper last night?
For dinner last night, I had Moroccan vegetable tagine. First time I've ever made it.
What is that? It sounds interesting.
It's great. My in-laws for Christmas gave us a tagine, which is a clay, I don't know how to describe it. It's a clay pot, if you will, and then it's got a cone-shaped top on it, and you just put it on a burner and load it up with vegetables and meat. We didn't have any meat, but and then you just cook it for a couple of hours, and it put Moroccan seasonings on it, and it was pretty good.
Wow, all that stuff just kind of sizzles in there, and
oh, it's awesome.
Ooh, yeah, I bet that's good. My next qualifying question is, can you parallel park?
Yes, I can parallel park. I had to do it, in a stick shift on my 16th birthday.
Oh, that's the worst. That's the best security. I don't think they even make those anymore. I don't know. I had a 72 Pinto and a couple of trucks and things like that. I don't know. How about pets? Do you have pets?
I do. I have the coolest dog ever. We've had her for 2 years. Her name is Coda, and she's a rescue, and she is awesome.
What kind of dog is she?
We did a DNA test because everybody asked us what she was, and it came back with like 40 to 50% border collie and a bunch of Aussie and what was the Great Pyrenees, I think, big white dog with a little bit of
run around in the sheep and.
Yep. She is awesome. She's smart and she loves to play Frisbee and she catches it midair. She's awesome.
She's a very active dog, probably.
Oh, yeah.
And you've got a pretty active lifestyle. I mean, you're doing the swimming coaching, and you do a lot of snow sports and
we try to stay busy, but you know, the whole job thing right now is kind of slow. So we've got time.
I want to talk about that later. I mean, I won't pretend that I know a lot about airplanes. So I just, what I've read on the internet, and we know that's all true. And the F-16, and I am going to try this thing here. Hang on. F-16, right?
That is one sexy jet, right?
Are there they have all kinds of different colors? Are they different from the top and bottom colors? I mean, like,
no,
from the top and viewed from the bottom, or?
Typically, they're all fighters, all U.S. fighters are just, we have a gray paint scheme. This one here in this picture is actually one that's painted from the aggressor squadron. So we have a squadron out at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, and they actually fly as adversaries. They're trained in adversary tactics. And if we have a big exercise, a training exercise, these guys fly simulating MiGs or, you know, Chinese aircraft, and we fight against them. And so if we go to emerge in a dogfight, you know, from a distance, it's hard to tell with the paint scheme or anything. But then if you merge with them, this is how we would ID that it's actually a simulated bad guy. So
and when you're seeing these things, I mean, you're going pretty fast and they're going pretty fast. I mean,
oh yeah, there's like 1,000 knots of closure or something crazy as we go to emerge.
You have to recognize stuff really fast.
Yeah.
How about, oh, look at this. This is you.
Oh yeah, that's me on one of my first combat sorties over in Iraq back a long time ago, around 2003.
That is a monster. Is that a bomb or a tank or a behind
That's
you?
a fuel tank right there. And then the weapon to the right of it is actually a HARM, a high-speed anti-radiation missile. So that was our primary mission out there. It was the Wild Weasel mission. So basically we'd go out there and look for surface-to-air missiles that were trying to shoot at us or any good guys. And we would use that anti-radiation missile to home in on them. And it's kind of a cat and mouse game, you know, we bait them to shoot at us and then we shoot back.
So you see where they're, and these things are with the 20 millimeter Gatling.
Yeah, that's the gun from where I'm standing, just to the right side of the ladder above my head. That's where the gun lives.
That is, those are badass. I mean, it's like 1 second burst, and there's 100 rounds going down there.
It's pretty good.
All right, now I had I took this. I know I showed you this video earlier, and you said that some of these weren't exactly F-16s, but I mean, it's so fast that I just can't. And then, so there's like about 9 or 10 flybys. I just want to show people how just unrealistically fast. And these are, and this close to the ground like this, I don't think they're near the speed of sound, but they're they're literally almost as fast as faster than a bullet. It's just unbelievable. There's like 9 or 10 of these little quick flybys for the awe aspect for people to look at. And then I've got a vertical takeoff, and then that flight of yours, your final flight.
Yep, Finney flight, my last flight in the F-16.
And when that pops up, you can I'd give us altitude and maybe little things there for a little bit. There we go.
Not an F-16. F-16.
Just amazing.
a car alarm going off. That was the shockwave. So that one was going supersonic.
There's the
That's an
vertical
F16
pickup. When I was in the Mojave Desert and with the 4th tanks, every once in a while a plane would come and buzz us, and it just incredible. And the dust would kick up like half a mile behind them. Just
yeah.
Now here's your flight.
So there I'm pushing up the power, checking the engine instruments. Now afterburner, you can see it shake a little bit. All right, I'm airborne, raising the gear right away. And now I'm just staying low and accelerating because I want to have enough airspeed to go vertical up to about 12,000 feet. So gears up, I'm cleaned up. Now I'm just accelerating. There's the end of the runway. Pretty low. I don't know exactly how low, probably lower than I should have been.
This part coming up just is amazing.
So I'm accelerating out to, I think I was about 450, maybe 500 knots. So 600 miles per hour-ish. And I just pulled 90 degrees straight up vertical.
That's a lot of.
And you can see my note cards kind of floating. So it's a little bit of a negative G, but then I roll inverted and then just let the nose fall down to the horizon so I can maintain some G on the jet, because it feels awkward if you push forward to pull negative G's, fly up in the seat.
And I'm looking at that. It looks like you can almost see the curvature of the earth.
Yeah, that's, I'm not high enough. There are times that you can see that, but here I'm only about 12,000 feet. So it's more the bubble canopy in the F-16 that's kind of skewing the picture a little bit, but it's a one sheet of the material there. So there are no seams or anything in the canopy, and it just, we call it the bubble canopy, and it's a pretty nice view.
Oh, it's just, wow. That must have been a real memorable flight. Did you get the champagne afterward?
That's right. I got it poured on me. I took a couple swigs, but yeah, it was an awesome flight. For the Finney flight, and that one being my last one ever, they let you choose pretty much who you fly with and what you're going to do. So I flew, I did the unrestricted climb, as you saw there. And then we drove out to Lake Powell in Utah and descended down and flew low level, so 500 feet, 500 knots through canyons. And it was awesome. It's awesome to fly fast. And I flew with one of my best friends who was stationed with me, and she's still in, and it was just a great flight.
Wow. I've loved planes. Why did I join the Marines tank division? But I think I was like 10 years old, and this was way before 9/11, and you could go out on the airstrip runway and wave to people by the gate and feel the heat from the blast. But I remember the stewardess. Now that's probably about 10, and the stewardess took me up to the cockpit, and it was like this, and he was flying over the city, and it was just the coolest thing. And he gave me a little metal future pilot pin. I had that somewhere. I looked all over the house for it, and I know I have it, but I put it somewhere so I wouldn't forget about it, and I forgot about it. But that was just the coolest thing. I did try flying lessons. There was a little C-150 we're here by the Moline Airport, MLI, and there's an aviation company that was doing lessons, and I took a couple, and I flew and going. I mean, you go in a car or on the ground, you're going straight, left, or right, but to go up is like a whole different dimension on that. I think the math killed me, plus my work hours and stuff. I never really pursued it. But a lot of people are asking. I'm get into you here. A lot of people are asking questions about you and stuff. Could you just tell us about yourself, quick history of what got you into an F-16 in the Air Force?
Sure. My story is a little bit different. You know, like my husband, he's also a pilot, and he wanted to be a pilot from the time he, you know, could talk and walk because his dad was a pilot. And my story, I feel like I somewhat stumbled upon it because I grew up in Utah. I was an only child, non-Mormon. I was a snowboarder. I was a total tree hugger. You know, we said granola back then. I don't know if that's still a term or if I'm dating myself again, but, you know, and I was a swimmer. I was on my high school swim team. And my junior year, I really started kind of, you know, having a lot of stress in my life about what I'd be when I grew up and if I'd go to college or where I would go to college and what I'd do. And I was losing sleep over it. My mom mentioned this one night to my aunt, her sister, and my aunt had been a career flight attendant for a major airline. And she told my mom, she said, well, I think it's super cool whenever I see a woman walk out of the cockpit. And my mom thought, wow, never even thought of, you know, my daughter becoming a pilot. And she mentioned it to me, and I was sold. I was sold on it. And so I started looking into ways on how do you become a pilot? I don't know any pilots. Especially I don't know any girls. And there's some aviation colleges, and you can get your flight hours and study, and it's just grossly expensive. But I kind of worried, thinking, well, I don't know that I should go to college and major in aviation or go to an aviation school, because what if I decide I don't like it? I've never flown an airplane. And then the military popped up in my search, and that was something totally unheard of for me. Like I said, tree hugger. I protested the start of the Gulf War in '91 when I was a senior. Like, military was not anywhere on my radar. But it was really intriguing to me to think about going to Colorado, jumping out of airplanes. I was a little bit of an adrenaline junkie. And so, you know, flying gliders in the summer and even running obstacle courses or assault courses. And all of that sounded kind of intriguing. So I sent a letter to the swim coach at the Air Force Academy, and he recruited me to swim. So it was kind of crazy. But yeah, I graduated 4 years later from the academy and ended up going to pilot training after that. So
I had a question from Sharon. She wants to know, did you have any hobbies?
I do. Yeah, well, it's winter in Colorado, so I still snowboard. Like I said, I started that in the 80s when people didn't even know what that was. And that was kind of my backup plan. If I didn't get into the academy, I was like, I'm going to become a pro snowboarder. So I'm glad I ended up where I did. But so I still snowboard. It's getting tougher to sit down and strap the bindings on each time. But I cross country ski, and we just love all the outdoor stuff that Colorado has in the winter. And then in the summer, ever since I retired from the Air Force, I have attempted to become a golfer. I'm obsessed with the sport. I love it, but I suck. But I'm taking some lessons in the next few months or this summer, and I'm determined to become a better golfer. But we also just love traveling. Any chance I get, I want to travel.
Golf is such a calm sport.
Not when I'm playing.
I gotta drive this thing. I had I'm gonna try doing this again here, because I had some questions that are videotaped here. So let's.
Hi there, my name is Cecily. Silly C is my nickname, aka CC. And my question is, what kind of food do you eat now and while you were training to be a fighter pilot?
Here.
Couldn't hear. Do you want to know, like, were you on any kind of special diets or anything of that when you were a pilot?
Any special diets?
Yeah. I mean, eat what you want, or did they regimes for the altitude or something?
No, they don't, we do actually get briefed on nutrition, especially for, having our body physically fit and pulling G's. But they don't regulate what we eat. In fact, the long-standing joke is that if you have high blood pressure, and you smoke a cigarette, you're probably going to be better at pulling G's, but that's not really the approved solution. So they do emphasize, a nutritious diet.
There's one from Renee. It's a deep question.
Hi, Melissa. My name is Renee, and I live in Western Iowa. Thank you for your service to our country. And I recently read a book called Daughters of the Night Sky about some of the first female fighter pilots. And I was wondering what it was like for you to break into a male-dominated field in such a difficult world. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Could you hear her okay?
I could hear that. She was asking what it was like to break into a male-dominated field, right?
You probably never get asked those kind of questions before, right?
Never. No, my favorite. Yeah. I think, being a non-Mormon only child growing up from Utah or growing up in Utah, that kind of prepared me a little bit because I was used to standing out or sticking out like a sore thumb. But also when I went to the Air Force Academy, it was 8% women. And so again, I had, more of a minority status there, but I didn't run into, at least at the Academy, I didn't run into any adversity there. I became good friends with everybody in my squadron, and my roommates were great girls, but I got along with the guys, and I swam there, and we had the men's swim team. And so I always felt comfortable in that environment and never felt awkward. So that I was 8% women at the Academy, and then going into fighters were like 2% or 0.02. I mean, yeah, I was the only woman in my F16 training, and then my first squadron and my second, there really weren't any other girls around there. So I missed being around other women. But I usually made friends with the wives of the guys that I flew with. But also throughout my training, if I ever ran across somebody that was, it was obvious that they didn't think I should be there, or they, were a jerk, I don't deal with them. My attitude, I'm not going to let them hurt me or bother me or get to me. My dad did a pretty good job giving me a very thick skin as a kid. He jabbed me and ribbed me all the time, and he made sure that I was not someone who ever, felt victimized or he developed a strong self-esteem. Both my parents did. And so when I run across people, and I still do to this day, I mean, jerks are jerks. It doesn't matter.
They're out there.
Why. They're out there, people just were raised wrong, I guess. But when I run across people like that, they're entitled to their opinion, but what they have to say does not impact me whatsoever.
Good. That's a fantastic attitude for anybody, for anything too.
Yeah, we make our choices, and my choice is to not let those people affect me.
All right, I'm going to try and get another question going here.
Hi, Melissa. This is Stephanie from Kansas City, and I want to thank you for being on Roger's show. I wondered if you might share with us a couple of experiences, whether they're good or bad, of your time as a fighter pilot. Thanks.
Okay.
That's a broad question.
Huh?
That's a broad question.
Yeah, it is.
All my experiences were good. I mean, honestly, I loved my time in the service. I truly did. I loved being in fighter squadrons. It's a work hard, play hard mentality. I think that pilots in general are a hilarious group of people, you know, and the work hard. Like if I ever opened up a business or needed a bunch of people to work hard and get a job done, I would not hesitate to grab a bunch of my old bros from Fighter Squadron and my sisters, you know, because we work hard. We work long days and it's very serious work. Like when we're not flying, we're studying everything about our jet or about enemy tactics. We're in the vault studying classified information, and we're perfectionists. Nobody likes to have a bad sortie, or, you know, we all make mistakes and we know that, but we debrief and we are constantly trying to get better. But afterwards, you know, we have a saying that the beer light comes on when the last flight lands, and we're in the squadron. It's now the Heritage Room, used to just be called the Squadron Bar, but you know, and you hang out and the camaraderie is spectacular. And, you know, Friday nights we'll have events and hang out together and tell stories. And it just, overall, it was a great experience.
Now, Kelly asked, you covered a couple of her questions, but she wants to know what you were given the Flying Cross for. Do you want to share that or something?
Yeah, it was a combat sortie in Iraq not too long after that picture that you showed. And it was, you know, I don't tell the war stories very well, but, you know, it was one of those nights. It was actually the 4th night of the war. And it was a wild weasel mission. So cat and mouse game, baiting the surface to air missiles who were shooting at us, and we needed to shoot back at them. And then we were re-rolled after that. And we call it TST, time sensitive target. And so we went and got gas, and then we were re-rolled to actually roll in and drop bombs on the missile sites that were shooting at us. And, you know, it involved bad weather and being flexible in the mission and moving tankers around because we were low on gas and getting shot at, and, you know, the whole works. But
we were going up against surface to air missiles and anti-aircraft, and I mean,
yeah, the sky, it was pretty bright that night. It was, you know, Baghdad at that time was the most heavily defended city in the world. And if, you know, when we looked at our intelligence that they gave us that showed all the surface to air missiles and the anti-aircraft artillery, the AAA, I mean, it was I forget what that game is where you draw lots of circles as a kid, and the city was just covered. So there was no way that we could fly into Baghdad without being in a threat ring of a missile. And they were shooting them.
No. That was another question I was going to ask myself. When you're going fast like that, you've got to be able to recognize stuff right away. I mean, it's not like when you're driving, you're maybe like 40, 50 feet ahead. I mean, you're talking miles and miles. Wow.
Yeah. The jet moves fast. It goes over Mach 2. But at altitude, you really don't have a sense of how fast you're moving, because we wear helmets and we have the microphone in there, and we're, you know, talking and we're listening, and so you don't really hear too much of the air rushing by. And so at altitude, you could go Mach 2 and not even know it. You know, you would have to rely on your gauges to do that. But down low, when we fly, like my Finney flight, a low level, that's really when you get the sense of it. You know, if you're at 500 feet above the ground and 500 knots or so, and you just see everything flying by. And so, yeah, you have to be ahead of the jet is a term that we use. You know, if you're behind the jet, you're just hanging on because the jet's going to move and you're going to get left back there, you know, so you do have to think quickly and be ahead of the jet.
I was looking at some of those pictures of those flybys. I mean, they look like they're maybe 10, 15 feet off the ground. They got to be a little higher than that, though. I mean, is that
some of those may have been pretty low. You know, we have rules that, you know, what training rules. So in training, you know, we typically fly at 500 feet, 500 knots, but in combat, sometimes those rules change.
Yeah. And The other thing that got me thinking about that when you're talking about it, yeah, you're sitting on an engine is what you're basically doing. When you're in that cockpit, it kind of looks like you're like, as opposed to driving a Mustang or a Corvette, and then you go to a van and you're like way up on top. It looks like you feel like you're sitting up on top of everything, or you kind of.
No, yeah, your legs are slid in. The cockpit is tiny. I mean, I'm 5'4" and 115 pounds, and I always felt cramped inside of that. But there are guys much bigger than us or than me that, fit into that cockpit. So you kind of slink down in for your lower body, but then that canopy rail, the bubble canopy, when I put my arms on the side, it's below my armpits, and then it's all the way around, just clear plexiglass essentially, so you have a great 360-degree view.
Hi, Melissa. It's Ed's turn now here. My question is about the stresses of combat maneuvering. What are the stresses on the body and the mind? It looks pretty easy from the ground or in the movies, but I am sure it's a whole lot more difficult than that. So any comments you have on that? Thank you.
We make it look easy, Yeah, there's a lot of stress on the body flying fighters for sure. I mean, by the time I retired, at age 42, I was ready to be done. It's, the number one stress is the G's. And in the F16, we can pull 9 Gs. So the aircraft, it's limited to 9 Gs, which is really more than any other fighter that I can't speak for the F-22 and the F-35, but when I was in, it pulled more than the other fighters that we have. And so the Gs are limited by the aircraft. So if we are flying, a dogfight mission, for example, we want to get max performance out of the aircraft, and 9 Gs is what we want. And the aircraft itself actually has some flight control limiters so that we will not over G the jet. Now you can over G and pull over 9 Gs accidentally if you're going fast and you snatch the stick back, so there are ways to do that. But typically if you're flying a smooth aircraft, the aircraft will protect itself from over G. But you can also over G when you start putting weapons or extra stores on the jet, so wing tanks or bombs, then that decreases the G available. And that does not have the flight control limiter. So that's up to the pilot to control, how hard we're pulling on the stick. And then the third thing is your body. You can definitely over G your body, and it's painful. I mean, it's fairly common for pilots of high performance aircraft to have neck and back issues because, for example, if we're flying a defensive, it's called BFM, basic fighter maneuvers. And that's where it's a dogfight, but we start in a defensive position. So when you're fighting, you're looking back over your shoulder at the bogey or the hostile aircraft behind you that's trying to gun you. And we want to pull as many Gs as we can to tighten our turn radius. But what happens is people, either pull back on the stick and pull Gs and then they turn their neck and it just crunches it. Or sometimes, if you're already looking back and you pull back 9 Gs, then you can't move. You're kind of stuck in that position. But the other big thing that is really, the number one killer of high performance aircraft pilots is a G lock, G loss of consciousness. And that is when you just pull back too fast or you're not ready for the G onset and you essentially black out and the aircraft hits the ground. But we do have some protective measures. We wear a G suit, which is just from your waist down, and it inflates. So anytime you have an onset of G, it's plugged into the aircraft and it inflates with air. So that one tells the pilot, hey, time to get on our G straining maneuver, which is basically to tense all our muscles. But it squeezes our calves, it squeezes our thighs, and it squeezes our abdomen. And the purpose of that is to keep the blood up in our upper body and mainly our brain, because so we don't pass out. So yeah, G's are a big threat, but also just being in shape. You know, when we do those dogfighting, and those are probably the most physically challenging missions, because you're pulling 9 Gs, you start sweating, you're breathing hard, your heart's racing, you're max performing the aircraft. You know, you need to be in shape for that. You know, so we do train you. You can not, you don't have to be a physical specimen, but it's probably better for you and your health if you are in decent shape.
And if you know what's happening, I guess, too. Now, G is like 2 Gs is twice the gravity, is, or does that?
Yes, that's exactly. So like 9 Gs turns my 115 pounds into almost 1,000 pounds.
Well, you're
over 1,000.
Your head weighs probably close to what, maybe 8-10 pounds.
Right.
Multiply that by 9 and
you're trying to hold up this 90-pound nugget, you know, while you're maneuvering and looking around. So yeah, it's challenging for sure.
Wow. So like if you're out cruising around just having fun, like on your finding flight, you're going and you're holding back. But when you're probably tense and stressed up and you're in a situation, you got to move fast. You got to be
you got to be ready for it.
Well, you know, which made me think, if you're kind of plastered back, you'd have to move your arm forward, or you have your hand on the control all the time.
You always have your hands on the throttle and stick, but that's a great point. You know, it's the weight just in your arms makes it difficult. The stick in the F-16 doesn't move. I mean, it moves like 1/4 of an inch, if that. So that's not a real problem. But the throttle, if you need to, you know, if you pull it back and you need to push it forward under heavy G, that can, you need to have some muscle.
I had somebody pop up with a question to the F-16 or even the 737, like Microsoft flight simulators. Have you ever messed with those? Are those anywhere near, well, I mean, except physically, but
I think they are. I'm not too much of a gamer. I should ask my kids, although they have no interest in flying games. But it's funny you say that, because there was a guy who was in training with me. We take a class just before we go to F-16 training. So pilot training is a year long, and then you get your wings. And then if you're going to fly fighters, you do this class that's a couple of months. It's called Introduction to Fighter Fundamentals. And, you know, that's kind of learning how to drop bombs, learning how to dogfight, that type of thing. And I had a guy in my class there who almost washed out of class, like great guy, but he struggled in the Intro to Fundamentals, or Introduction to Fighter Fundamentals class. And then he went to F-16 school and he ended up in the class behind me there, but he was a distinguished grad. I mean, he ate that class up. And I was like, Andy, how did you do so good in this class? You know, what was your secret? And he's like, oh, I have Falcon 4.0. Like, he knew everything. That's an old school game. It's probably up to 12.0 now, but he knew how to do that flight simulator like the back of his hand. And then, so, you know, he said it was very realistic, but my husband and I were stationed at the Air Force Academy in 2008 to 2010. And one of these cadets came up to us at a football game because he had heard we were F-16 pilots. We were the only ones working there. And he was like, hey, I heard that you fly F-16s. Can you tell me, is this right? And he went through the whole start sequence of how to start the engine on an F-16. And we were like, yeah, you're exactly right. How do you know that? And he was like, oh yeah, I have a simulator, or, you know, whatever the video game is. So yes, I think they're pretty realistic. And I've seen the stick and the throttle that you can hook up to those games or simulators, and they look legit. So
that's cool.
Yeah, I think it's pretty spot on.
I had a question pop up from my cousin here. Hang on.
Hi there, my name is Lynn. I'm Roger's cousin, and I live in Hendersonville, North Carolina. And I was just curious, how many other women have received this distinguished medal, the Flying Cross? Do you happen to have any idea? Because it's pretty impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think they have an exact count, but last I heard it was maybe 12 to 15 that they know about. So not a lot really at all, but I'm in great company with Eileen Collins, she was the first female shuttle commander, and she was awarded a DFC. And Amelia Earhart apparently has a Distinguished Flying Cross. And then I do know a couple other girls, A-10 pilots, that have one. So yeah, there aren't a lot of us out there.
Have you ever entertained the idea of like NASA or something like that?
No, they work too hard. So
okay.
I'm retired, so no,
okay.
that would be cool. They're actually a guy in my pilot training class. He wanted to be an astronaut his whole life, and he, we went to pilot training together, and then he went up in space about 2 years ago.
I mean, it's like the dream job. Have you ever heard of, or you've probably the restaurant Medieval Times?
I've heard of it.
Where they sit you in this big arena, and there's horses and knights that fight each other while you're eating this. And I went and talked to one of these guys afterward, and he says, "This is the dream job. I get to retire a knight."
Nice.
I had a question from Deb, and I got to play this clip first because it ties right in there. But she wants to know the difference between flying a fighter and flying an airliner. I got to reference something here.
What flying experience have you had?
I flew single-engine fighters in the Air Force, but this plane has 4 engines. It's an entirely different kind of flying altogether.
It's an entirely different kind of flying.
Now you've seen the movie Airplane, surely.
Don't call me Shirley.
Yeah.
Yes, I've seen it.
Can you fly this plane and land it?
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Hi, Melissa. Thank you for your service. I would like to know, what is the difference between flying a fighter jet and a commercial airline?
Is it a big transition? I mean, I know it's a big transition, but you're going from a thing that can go like over twice the speed of sound with one engine that just accelerates ungodly to something that, what is it, top speed 600 miles an hour maybe, and
a little slower.
it's going to be like driving a big bus as opposed to like a motorcycle. I mean,
yeah, it was a change. It definitely was a change. Flying fighters, it's not just about the flying. Like, it is a weapon system that I am controlling, and we happen to deliver our weapons by means of flying. So in addition to flying an aircraft, I also am worried about working the radar and all my different weapons, and, talking to my formation and, the other guys, and looking at the enemy fighters that are out there, and conducting this mission. And when we fly, it is so busy. Everybody's talking on the radio, and you're working the hands-on throttle and stick, so the stick and the throttle have about 200 functions per button. Well, that's a gross exaggeration, but they all move in different directions, and so it is very, very busy. And the airline, not quite like that, but I will say it is a challenge still. Flying, no matter what, both have their challenges, and flying a 737 is not the easiest plane in the world. It's more systems automation management and figuring out the autopilot modes and that type of thing. And the crew coordination, I flew single seat my whole time in the Air Force, and I'll tell you a secret. I never gave a crap about my landings, like never did. And now
we're down.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, if I land 2 or 3 times, whatever. But you get to the airline and you've got 180 people in the back that kind of care about how you fly and how you land and
spill my drink.
Yeah, exactly. So, and some guy next to me, I never had to worry about sitting, and now we're professional conversationalists with somebody that you're locked behind a closed door for 4 days straight. So
that's got to be important thing to be able to get along with. There's intense training in that 737. I mean, you have to. Is that a long training thing to?
Yeah, it was. I think training for my airline, it was about 6 weeks long, and it's all in the simulator. All simulator training. So the first time I ever flew passengers was in my first flight, operating. So, but it's great. Those simulators are truly amazing. They are so realistic.
It's probably so weird just sitting back and kind of just letting the plane do its thing as opposed to controlling it. I bet.
Yeah, it's very different. I mean, we still do the takeoffs and the landings, but then once you're up at altitude, it's typically, autopilot is on and you're just managing everything, and looking for the weather, and we'll maneuver if we need to. But, landing the 737 has its challenges. And so crosswinds or short runways or bad weather and the plane, they just keep stretching it. So it's not the easiest plane. It actually has the fastest approach speed of all the aircraft in the fleet of my airline.
Wow. Now coming up to talk about the 737, we'll split this into 2 parts, and let's do this again next week. But before we go, I'll mention this, because I'm going to mention it again in next week. And Sharon had asked the question about how, well, I don't know where it went. Sharon had asked the question, do you mentor young women or speak to groups? And I thought I'd say that later because you have this, you have a couple different things that you do. Tell us about those.
I try to as much as I can. In fact, I work with a local flight school here that does some training for kids, for homeschool kids in aviation. And I love going out there and talking to them. And when, can I let my dog in? She is scratching me. I'm sorry.
Oh, isn't that great?
Oh. Okay. There's the dog. She's scratching to get in. So sorry.
That's good.
Okay. So yeah, I work at the local flight school and talk to them. And, part of my passion right now, when I started flying fighters, I was sort of that first wave of women to get into fighter aircraft. And I really didn't have any female mentors or anybody, senior to me. So once I think it was my 3rd assignment in the Air Force, I ended up as an instructor at the F16 schoolhouse. And there were 4 other women there. We had 8 squadrons. So we, of course, weren't in the same squadron, but it was the first time that we had more than maybe 2 of us. And we started going to lunch and hanging out together. It was so nice to have other girls and realize we had shared experiences. And we decided to start the CFPA, the Chick Fighter Pilot Association. And not a PC name at all, but it's still alive and well today. And we started it back in 2006. And so now we have a great forum, and it's all about mentorship for, the girls that did the same thing. But I love going out and speaking to kids or any other groups that I can, and, trying, because like I said, with my aunt, it took one person to say, hey, what about flying? And it totally inspired my whole life.
Isn't that weird how one little thing can just switch things up. You also are part of a group that people can find on Facebook, Athena's Voice.
Yes. Yep. Athena's Voice. It's a friend of mine. She flew A-10s, and after she retired, she, you know, really wanted to get into public speaking. And so she has started this group. It's like a speaker bureau, but it's filled with all girls who are or have flown aircraft or U.S. fighter aircraft. So a few, or mostly pilots, a few backseaters, and then one girl who just joined who she didn't fly fighters, but she was an Air Force pilot, retired as a full bird colonel. So yeah, it's Wisdom of Women Warriors.
Wow. I will put that, I'll put that link in the thing there. Okay. And well, let's do this again next week, Mara, depending on you're on call or something, right?
Okay, I should be good.
We'll talk about that. All right, Melissa. Thanks for joining. And
sure,
we'll see you next week.
Okay, thank you.
Looks like we're coming in. Looks like we're coming in for a landing. I want to thank everybody for joining. Hope you had a great time. It's fun putting on the music, and it's so much fun talking to Melissa Schock. If you have some questions, remember part 2 is next week. Give me some questions, and please leave comments like say, hey, hi, how you doing? So I know who was here, if it's at all interesting. And everybody have a great week, and I'll see you next week.